Oh, we're going live at both channels. That's really perfect. Tito, he makes it all happen. Thanks to our IT director, Jesse. I almost called you Jesse Ventura. That's taking an old name back. Jesse Ventura. I think it was
Jesse Ventura.
Are you live?
He was like a wrestler. I am live. I'm going to jump right into the message. So welcome, TCI family. Thank you all those that are tuning in. I see you guys popping on there. Hello. Oh, we got a whole bunch of you guys jumping on tonight. All right. So last week, as promised, we're going to jump right into the message, and the message that we're going to delve into for the next, it could be 4 to 8 weeks. It's just going to see how this metamorphosis and how it evolves. But it's a message that my birth father preached as his battle cry for his whole life. And it was called The Road to Zion. And what it was is it's taken the life of the King David, who was the second king of Israel, and he followed his life from a boy as a shepherd to his death. And it's a road. And you see these tragedies and traumas and triumphs and victories and pain and loss and all kinds of tragedy, but all kinds of blessings. And there's an actual roadmap. And there's stages that his road the road to Zion represents in Israel. That represented Jerusalem, that the ultimate. So Zion was like the achievement. You are ruling and reigning in Zion was how my father would state it. And so this message is about taking and finding out the different phases that we can go through. And David, when we last left off, he had just been notified by the prophet of the land, Samuel, that he was going to be the next king. And this is in the first book of Samuel, chapter 16, 15 and 16 that we read last. Now, this time we're jumping right into 17, in the chapter of 17 of the first book of Samuel. But I want to, before I jump into that, I want to make some points here. David was a child between the ages of 10 and 15. That's the consensus from the records. He was the second king, so his life is chronicled. And back then they did census, and they're pretty accurate, actually. It's amazing, actually, how accurate those things were. But they actually can say that he was narrowed down to between 10 and 15, which makes sense because a man back then, we're talking, 1,500 years way before Jesus. We're going way back, a couple thousand years. Back then, a man was expected to be married by the time he was 15, 16 years old. He already had a wife. His wife and him already had children before they're like 16, 17. This was the norm back then. So when you think of a little boy, like we learned about last week, right? They said he was the little boy of the brothers. They didn't even bring him in to look at. He wasn't even worthy to be looked at because he was just a kid. He was a kid. Well, that kid was a shepherd boy. And so the shepherd boy, we're going to learn about a little more today. But Robert Greenleaf, in his book, Servant Leadership, says an interesting thing. He says, the servant leader is a servant first. It begins with the natural feeling that one wants to serve first. Then conscious choice brings one to aspire to lead. And so you've got this statement of a servant leader. And so I think they're trying to change my chair because this thing's squeaking. Is that what they're trying to do?
Yeah,
they're trying to
sorry.
change my chair. Sorry, guys.
Stand real quick. Sorry.
Wardrobe malfunction, except hopefully my clothes stayed on. All right. Thank you, guys.
Sorry.
So you've got the servant leadership example of David. So David was a shepherd boy. Well, let's talk about what a shepherd boy is real quick. Shepherd boy between the ages of 10 and 15 kill lions and bears and tigers. Oh, my. And if you think, yeah, whatever. Go do your own research, non-biblical research. Go do all the research you want. Between 10 and 15, they teach the shepherds with a slingshot how to kill an animal like a lion hunting its sheep as far out as 50 yards with a slingshot. And they can still duplicate that today, right now in Israel. They still do that in the Palestinian region. They still teach these techniques. And these boys, well, I don't know about you, but they called them boys back then. David had already killed a lion and a bear. with his hands and that tool. Knocked him unconscious. Bear, he got his sheep away from the lion, and all of a sudden it roars back up. And what does he do? He finishes the job. Now, I don't know about you guys, but if you bring me some guy and you say he's a kid and he just killed a bear and a lion, I'll be honest with you, that ain't no kid. That's a grown man right there. That's like John Wayne stuff. That's no child. So when you look at the next big scene that we're discussing, which is Goliath, and I'm going to paraphrase a lot of this, David gets told by his dad, hey, all the big boys, your brothers, they're up at the battle. You need to go take refreshments to your brothers. Take some cheese, take some meats, bring it to the brothers, some wine. They need that. So his father sends him up there, and David goes. And when he gets there, he literally sits there, and he's hearing this Goliath, call him all kinds of names. And David's like, when are you guys going to get out there and fight him? He calls him out. He's like, what are you doing? He keeps saying, send in your biggest guy. Send in your toughest guy. Come on, you guys are all tough macho men. That's what David, the kid, is saying. Now, here's an interesting point of view. I used to always think it was because David was a little young and arrogant. But now the funny thing is, the older I get, I actually see a different perspective. You see, the younger I was, closer to my time on the street, good luck on trying to get a swing in and land on me. Good luck. You're going to have a hard time landing a punch on me. Now, flash forward all these years later, being out of the game, Jesse was there. Jesse was with me when a man got his hand around my throat in the middle of a parking lot. Now, thank the good Lord, I still had a little juice left in this arm, and I was able to get out of that. But what my point is David went to a battlefield with a bunch of older men. And older men who have been battle-scarred can be hurt and wounded and afraid. And so that's an interesting thing to keep in mind, because he then goes and says this, I'll kill him. So they send him to the king, and it says, now when the words which David spoke were heard, they reported them to King Saul. And of course, the king's like, come on in here, puts all of his armor on him, tells him, if you kill this guy, you get my daughter, okay? And you'll be my right-hand guy. And so David's like, all right, I've got this. So we all know the story, right? David went down and he looked. The first thing is he said, I can't use your armor. I have never used this in battle. But this is the best technology right now for warfare. And he's like, that's great. I've never used it. I just need a sling. I need a riverbed so I can go pick up 5 stones. People always ask, why did he get 5 stones? Because he had to kill Goliath, and Goliath had, you know how many brothers? Yeah, he wanted to make sure he had enough. This kid couldn't even barely lift the sword after he dropped Goliath. And what's interesting is when he walked down there, he saw this man that the tribes that they were fighting are known to have men at that time of about 10 feet tall. Giants. Yeah, giants. And everyone was terrified to go down and fight the giant because they're like, do you see how big he is? Wait until you see what David's perspective was about how big this guy was. So as we jump down here, Matthew 23:11 says, but the greatest amongst you shall be your servant. So wait, Rev, why are we going back to being a servant? You started with a servant, and he's a boy. He is a boy, and his father told him to go take care of the sheep. Now, I've been to Israel. I've walked with shepherds, and I've seen and had the pleasure of watching them use their actual slings. And I noticed another thing about these warriors. They're covered in poop. Sheep poop. It's everywhere. You walk in it. It's in your toes at the end of the day. These guys back then just had sandals. Now, nowadays, they got boots, so it's not in their toes. But back then, they didn't. So this was the crappy job, no pun intended. But this job made him a warrior. And he was fresh from killing the lion and fresh from killing a bear. So he's like, I got this, man. I don't know why you guys are so scared. Now, that's a whole nother discussion. But what happens here is what's interesting about the servant leadership is David, everyone wants to be king. Everyone says, I want to be king. I want the $1 million. I want to be the CEO. I want to be the boss. I want to do this. I want to be the celebrity. But nobody wants to be the person to go scrub the toilet. Nobody wants to mow the yard. Nobody wants to paint the part of the wall that's all messed up. We'll all complain about it, but nobody wants to do anything. The servant leader, well, there's a lot of things about that. We learned this week, Jesse, didn't we? People that are servant leaders, they lead from serving. And those are the people everyone wants to be around. So here's David showing up going, I'll serve. I killed lions and bears. I'll serve and kill this guy. So he does. Now, what's interesting is when you look at what he did, a leader must be attentive to the concerns of their followers. Do you know who actually coined that phrase? A beautiful spirit that walked this earth named Gandhi. He was amazing. He had this philosophy that leaders must be attentive to the concerns of their followers, empathize with them, and then nurture them. Jesse, I'm so sorry that you were struggling with the loss of your mother and your uncle, all in that short period of time. He knows my heart. He knows I love him. He knows I care, and he's seen it with my mouth, meeting my actions, and then he is receptive to being nurtured and growing. And now look at this guy. He's starting to tell me what to do. Pretty impressive. So let's look at now who the boy is. The boy became a man warrior in the field serving. They called him a boy. He wasn't a boy. What I'm trying to tell everybody right now is someone's out there right now sitting watching this, and it could be you here, it could be you out there, and people are calling you things or telling you you're a label. You're this, you're that. And you're like, I'm no boy. I'm a warrior. You don't know what I've been through. And the brothers are telling him, you've never even been to war. And he's like, you guys have never killed the lion and the bear. I did. You were the elders, so you were privileged. The rest of us had to fight for everything, the scraps. So this warrior is not a man overnight. This became one in the field, serving faithfully in a crappy job that he was faithful to as a boy, transitioning into a man, taking that opportunity, and he does this. And then in chapter 17 of 1 Samuel, you see this warrior transition. And it's a beautiful transition as this warrior is no longer a child because he killed Goliath. He now is being celebrated. Unfortunately, in chapter 18, and again, I paraphrase this stuff for you. Chapter 18, the king Saul wants to kill him. And the reason is they were coming back into the city gates, the women sang songs, and they sang a song. Saul has slain his thousands, but David his tens of thousands. And they were in the chariot together. So what do you think that did to the king? He got jealous. Instead, he could have had an opportunity. He should have said, that's right. David has killed his tens of thousands. He's my leader that I'm rearing up to run this place. He should have used David as an opportunity. Instead, he looked at David as competition. That's what he looked at it. He didn't see that it was a blessing. So he saw it, and that's why God saw all that. That's why he lost the kingdom. So now David is in a bad place, and he's persecuted by the king. Now, I like this part that I do want to just kind of go into, and it's briefly talking about what John Maxwell. I like to actually paraphrase what he said about Goliath. He said, when Goliath taunted the armies of Israel, the frightened Hebrew soldiers forgot how to fight. They lacked a leader who could provide a strategy for success. Saul was a very experienced soldier, but he cowered in the corner of fear. David showed up. And David did not suffer because he did not have a limitation on his lid. So here's what David did. David said, my lid is lifted. Think of a garbage can. I'm a garbage can. I got a lid. My lid, I can't put anything else in there. I can't go any higher unless I raise my lid. If 10 is the greatest leader and 0 is the least leader and you're a 2, if you want to become a 3 and a 4 on the leadership scales, how do you do that? You don't hang out with 1s and 2s. You hang out with 4s and 5s because they already became a 3 and 4 on the scale of a leader. So they know how to get there. My wife's adopted dad who passed, he was a sheriff. You guys know that. And Papa Chuck and me talked one day about why sheriff deputies didn't get promoted and why others got just took off. And he said, oh, that's really usually easy. And I said, really? He goes, yes. He said, what happened was, he said, deputies that hung out with their other fellow deputies, they never hung out with the sergeant when they got the invite to come to the family barbecue. They never went to the function with the captain when they all were invited to the fundraiser. It's a fundraiser. It's optional. They never socialized with other things. They didn't get involved in helping do charitable work on behalf of the charities that they're involved with. They didn't do any of those things. And then the ones that did, the ones that showed up with the attitude of a joy in their heart, wanting to help people, the one that showed up like David and said, I'll serve. You know, when I go to my family and friends' houses, you know what I do? I want to clean. How can I cook? How can I help you? What can I do for you? Tomorrow morning, we're going to a member of our church who's watching. We're going to help finish working on a porch. Not finish it, but we're going to continue working on it. These are joys and pleasures. Now, when you do these things, people watch that. Bosses watch that. Companies watch that. Presidents watch that. Power brokers watch that. And things take off and things move in your direction. And the guys and gals who don't, well, like Saul, they die and wither away. And like David, the ones that actually can tap into that leadership of lifting their lid. So if you want to be around people that are more experienced, you want to be around mentors who are successful in marriage. That's why we hang out with someone who helps teach us about marriage counseling, because we're both bad at it. We can tell you how not to do a marriage, but we're learning together how to do a marriage. So we have experts in those fields. And so you've got to remember it's critical when you do that. Now, here's what's interesting. As I looked at what Papa Chuck said about the deputies, and I looked at what David did here, I saw that John Maxwell, and he analyzed David's life. And I'm going to end with this. I want you guys to hear what David had. So this was a boy. Remember, we just got to the story of David and Goliath. And that's all. And now that he's being chased by the king. So a boy who became a man. Well, that boy had perspective. He had method. He had conviction. He had motives. He had vision. He had experience. And he had attitude. Let's break it down. Perspective. He saw the victory. When was the last time you saw your goal? You got to see the goal. Most of you know I'm working on this summer. I'll be taking a hike from Mexico to Canada, the Pacific Crest Trail. 2,600 and change on the walk. A lot of walking. Don't know if I can actually physically make the whole thing or not, but I'll be out trying and we'll see how it goes. Nope, that's not how my brain works. That's how maybe some brains work. Here's how my brain works. Man, I'm so excited. I get to go do a thing called the Pacific Crest Trail. It's 2,600 plus miles. It's going to be the most, it's going to be a mind-blowing experience. It's going to be exciting. We're going to be in weather like 110 degrees in certain places. And then we're going to be in some cold weather. We're going to have some snowy mountains, which is crazy. All in this 5-month trip where you got to be out there in the wilderness by eaten alive by mosquitoes and bugs and hope you don't get caught by the rattlesnakes, the mountain lions, and all that. And then all the crazies who also, might be out there in the world. And guess what? I'm going to do it. See, I see the victory. I have perspective, like David, because I saw he had perspective and I want to be successful. Next thing was method, proven weapons versus tools. Remember, the king gave him all of his warrior stuff. And David said, don't need it. I need a sling, none of this armor. I can move fast with no armor. I'm agile and quick. And that is critical to go to war with the things that you know. Conviction. He was the wild beast killer. Think about that. He had conviction. He's looking at a man, a human, frail, a lion. He's got that. Motives, pure versus evil. What is your motive? What is your motive in talking to people? What is your motive in trying to help someone at work or not help them? What is your motive? Is it pure? Is it an honest motive, or is it evil? Vision. He asked what happens next. One of the questions he asked was, if I beat this king, what do I get? He's smart. He says, what's next? Okay, I got you. I got this guy. But what's next? Well, you get my daughter. You get this. You're going to be able to be a leader in my army. Oh, okay. I got it. Let's go. So he had vision. He had experience. But wait, he's a boy. He's 10 to 15 years old. They said when they put the armor on the king on him, that you can see that he looked like a little kid. But think about that. And this guy, he has experience. Absolutely. And his attitude. And the attitude determines your altitude. Your attitude will determine your altitude. If you're negative and you're pissing and moaning in life, I did it. And it got me nowhere. And then one day, Dr. Norman Vincent Peale said, Jonathan, you're only 8 years old, but someday you can change the world. And I was like, whoa, I can? And I believed. And I've never stopped believing because of my attitude. See, David didn't see the giant that was standing out there so big that he was afraid to get killed by him. Here's what David saw. He saw the giant so big that he couldn't miss the target. He's like, oh my God, this thing's 10 feet tall. I mean, the bear's running at me and he's running on all four. I've only got like a couple foot range. I got all over this thing. This guy's head, they said that it was the size of 3 normal humans' heads. He was excited. He's like, thank God I don't have to try to hit that pigeon on the side of the building over there. I probably can do it. So he had attitude. You got to have the right attitude. So there we go, guys. I love you. You know the drill. Live positive. As we live positive, remember, we need perspective, method, conviction, motives, vision, experience, and the right attitude. This is 47 years of my life over the next 8 weeks that I'm going to be pouring into your lives. And I'm going to make you a little promise. If you only took one of these weeks, like this lesson here today, and just focused on those last points that I made, I can guarantee you 5 years from now, your life will be so much different. If you just take the time to get perspective, to make sure the method is proven, to make sure you have the mentors, get that conviction in what you're doing, or else you got to realize you're not it then. You got to get that conviction. So that's it, guys. I love you. Keep your eyes out. We got new and exciting things next Tuesday, South Everett. Miss Patty, we love you. She's watching. And there's also some very exciting news. There's a friend of mine that I'm working with about doing a retreat, and I'll be letting everybody know more about that as that comes along. We are done. Thank you, Jesse.